Hey guys, today we're going to crunch some numbers and we're going to draw some similarities and differences between these two knives of similar intent. So you've got a Cold Steel Code 4, you've got a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Both of these are large EDC, everyday carry type knives. Both would be touted as hard use or high performance knives by their makers and by other knife reviewers. Hard use for me in the pocket knife isn't particularly it's not really a quantifiable thing in my opinion. I think you can use most pocket knives just depending on whether they're locking or not. It's just about as hard use as a pocket knife gets, and that's the only real modification you can make to a pocket knife in my mind to make it hard use, because anything like wood or hard materials I'm going to be using a fixed blade for. At any rate, it's the category that these two fall into. Let's go through the comparisons of all the different specs. This might be a spec heavy video, and you can obviously see them there. See, they are very similar sizes to the naked eye without knowing the exact numbers, so let's get into it. Weights, very important for everyday carry I suppose. 119 grams, sometimes 120 on the Code 4, 110 grams on the Paramilitary 2. Blade lengths, from the end of the handle to the tip of the knife, so not necessarily the cutting edge, and a blade sticking out of the knife handle, 9.5 centimeters on the Code 4, 9 centimeters on the Paramilitary 2. Overall length, 21 centimeters on the Paramilitary 2, 22.5 on the Code 4. The width when you close the knife in the pocket, and this is an important measure for me. This is what makes a knife for me truly pocketable or not, or one of the things. This is the thickness. So this is 4.5 centimeters across. This is actually a slight bit narrower at its widest point, 4.25 centimeters. However, when you flip them this way, the Paramilitary 2 is the thicker knife. About 10.5 to 11 millimeters thick. The Code 4 maintains 9 millimeters thick due to its lock-back construction needing less space and the thin aluminium handles there. So the handle of the Code 4, you get a 5-inch handle, 13 centimeters or so, and you get the same by my count on the Paramilitary 2, and both truly do seem to fill my hand about the same amount. The thickness of the blades are both about 3.5 millimeters, perhaps 3.6 or 3.4. With a ruler I can't quite tell, and didn't have my calipers handy. So the thickest part of the cold steel blade will be on this flat portion here. There is somewhat of a swedge at the top there. Spyderco's obviously quite rapidly declines in thickness to a full flat grind. The steel you get is CTS XHP in the cold steel, and you get S30V in the Spyderco. Handle material, aluminium in the Code 4, and the G10, which is somewhat rough G10 in the Paramilitary 2. In Australia you'll pay $240 at most retailers for a basic Paramilitary 2, a bit more if you want digi-camo, black blade, that sort of thing for some reason. Code 4s will go for about $150 to $160 on most major knife retailers when they have them in. So, what are the differences? What's better on one than on the others? Well, here's some basic critiques I've formed about the Code 4 first. You get a bit of extra size for very little extra weight. So it's a slightly bigger knife, and it definitely feels a bigger, stockier knife than the Paramilitary 2. Whether that is a good thing or not, I'm not sure. You get a superior blade steel. CTS XHP is a rather new high performance steel, and by all accounts it does seem to hold its edge a little bit longer than the S30V that the Spyderco have used in this model here. The more pocket friendly of the XHP Code 4. It's a thinner knife, and the scales I find make it slip into the pocket a lot easier. The clip is easier to use. Very little friction under this point, just enough pressure exerted on the pocket seam by the clip here. Paramilitary 2 has that G10 meets pocket clip phenomenon where it can grab a pocket just a little tiny bit. Get a superior price point in the Code 4, about $100 less for what you could argue are superior materials overall. and you get a stronger lock. The Triad lock is stronger than the Paramilitary 2's, which is still a rather strong lock, the compression lock. Paramilitary 2, what do you get? Well, I think you get a blade shape that is superior for everyday carry tasks. A bit slicier. The tip is nice and fine working tip, which I know can be a negative if you're using your knife for rough and tumble work, but I don't, so I like having a nice sharp little tip there. Very needle point still, even after a couple of goes over the sharpener. Smoother performance. It is a lot easier to access the blade of your Paramilitary 2. It is it's a flick rather than a wave open. You can obviously do it slowly if you want, but there is no need to. It's not even an aggressive detent, it's just a very smooth mechanism, and I think that would be partly because of the lock. So locks do affect much more than the strength, they often affect the ease of opening the knife. Spider hole I prefer to the cold steel as well. The cold steel, a little bit tricky to open. You need to have your hand in the right position to get that thumb stud all the way out. Otherwise you can have, if you open it too low, you'll have to readjust, and that leaves you open too, which, as I'll show you, this knife does have a fair little snapback sort of thing. So it's just a lock back issue, but definitely has a slight more element of danger to using it. Just say if you weren't really focusing or concentrating, and perhaps you'd only just got the knife. The grip in the Paramilitary 2 I find more comfortable as well. Even though it's thicker, it fills the hands a little bit more. Although it's less pocket friendly in my opinion than the Code 4, I think carrying the back pocket offsets that, and it becomes a little bit more of a general use friendly knife. I find the Paramilitary 2 easier to use still. I've had a couple of days of using the Code 4 now, and I think it's definitely not making the same classic impression on me as the Paramilitary 2 did. S30V is still a very good steel. Still going to hold its edge a lot longer than your 440 or your 400 series steels. You'll be dragging this one across the sharpening bench still less than, say, your Swiss Army knife or a lesser pocket knife. The XHP is somewhat documented to hold its edge a little bit longer, but then that's probably when they push bar reviewers into doing tasks that would degrade an edge a lot quicker as well. So we'll have to see what real life use takes. I'd probably sharpen each of my knives probably about once every 3 months, and that seems to do it for me. Which knife do you think's better? Which do you prefer? Another couple of little things I'd notice is that I feel you might have less control with the Code 4. Whether that's a purpose thing or not, it has this divide again, with the knuckle ends here, and then there's just this negative space where I know it's for security. They've had to put this forward finger guard there because there isn't any other real jimping or security on the blade apart from the finger grooves. This handle does become slightly slick when you use it with sweaty hands, just a little bit. But then, as I said, I'm probably not going to be hard using it, so there's no real element of danger there, I wouldn't suggest. It is comfortable to hold this handle, but not as comfortable as the Paramilitary 2. I think at this stage I would probably hold off on commenting. I think these two knives may not be the most evenly matched. I think the cold steel approximation of the Paramilitary 2 may well be the American Lawman. I think that these aren't exactly the same market. I think this one is probably a touch more combat or sidearm focused than this one, despite the name, Paramilitary. I know. I think an appropriate comparison to the Code 4 may be something, if you're looking from Spyderco, along the lines of perhaps a Police, which is the longer blade, and just more of a martial use knife rather than an everyday carry knife. So that may be a comparison for some point in the future. Is this worth getting? I think it is. I think for $150 you get some great materials, a knife that comes with really high fit and finish, and a very, very good blade steel. For $240, I wish these were a bit cheaper. I think $240 is a bit steep to be paying for this knife, especially given in Australia our laws have eased up so the retailers can't be as as we're the ones that've got these at the moment. They're quite easy to get now, so I think if we all just stopped paying the damn price, they'd probably drop it, but I don't think that's going to happen because this is a very, very rewarding knife to have and a very fun one to play with. So there we go. Just a few thoughts there on the Code 4 versus the Paramilitary 2. What do you think? Just let me know in the comments which you prefer the looks of or the feel of. Purely aesthetically, I think I prefer the look of the Code 4. I like this. I like the grayscale. I like the spear point. I think this one just feels better in hand. So has a higher gadget factor as well, which I often go on about. But it's true. It's important. You play with your knife a lot more than you use your knife if you're a knife guy. I promise you. So it's important to me as well. Overall, what else have I missed? The Paramilitary has a 4-way pocket clip. Code Steel, Code 4. I'm going to watch this video back and I'm sure I've said Code Steel or Cold 4 or all those sorts of things. The Code 4 just has a 2-way, left and right handed, so you can't carry this knife tip down whether you'd want to or not. Most people don't these days. So there we go. Thanks for watching my little overview. Just feel like making another discussion type video. See you chaps later.